Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, welcome to another episode, Wear Many Hats. Really excited today, actually. We've got a fantastic guest. I'd like to introduce you to Samuel Egginton. How you doing, Sam? You all right?
Good, thank you very much.
You do prefer Sam, don't you?
I prefer Sam, yes.
Oh, that's good.
You.
That's good. Yeah.
You're not my mum.
I got a bit tongue-tied there, didn't I, to be fair? Well, listen, thank you very much for joining us here today. Absolute pleasure. Always start with a really easy question. And that question is, talk us through your career and how you ended up in facilities management.
So I left school and went to work for Sainsbury's and did all sorts of different roles for Sainsbury's in stores, and then moved to head office and ended up on a project looking at cleaning in retail of all things.
Right, okay. Yeah.
And that was sort of, a project that was supposed to come in, do the project and go. But yeah, at the end of it, I just got kind of quite interested in it. There was a role in FM, and that's how I stumbled into FM.
I mean, to be fair, cleaning would actually be a big cost for something like a business like Sainsbury's, because of the scale of,
After security and refrigeration, it was probably one of the
highest,
biggest, second or third biggest contract that Sainsbury's had. Yeah,
and how was it getting to grips with that? If you were relatively new to the role, was it quite challenging? Because that's quite complex, isn't it? Because you've got DCs, retail stores, smaller stores, and all have different requirements and needs and technology that's used and manpower. Yeah. That must have been quite difficult to get your head round, I suppose.
It was interesting. I came into it as a very similar projecty sort of we currently spend this is how we do it, what else is going on across the industry, can we do it any differently? There was obviously a cost saving sort of target around it, but actually when you get into it, it's kind of really fascinating in terms of what was it was sort of early stages of robotics and whether that would work in retail environments.
Did it?
We trialed it. We did some good stuff with it, but not necessarily. Unfortunately,
there's too many moving parts.
There is too many moving parts, and even trying to do it overnight when obviously online shopping happens overnight in stores, it was tough. Yeah. But in distribution centres, we tried it as well. But again, they're 24/7 operations.
Too many people wandering around.
There's always something going on.
Yeah, because you'd have peak and off peak as well in a DC, wouldn't you? So that would be very difficult to manage.
Exactly. So we played around with it quite a lot, but unfortunately at the time it just wasn't necessarily the right thing for us. It didn't quite work.
Oh, fantastic! What type of robot out of interest did you try? I always find that quite interesting. Can you say, or would that?
We talked to loads of the sort of leading, sort of Milfris and Diversi and all the sort of leading players at the time around what they were doing and what kind of journey they were on in terms of technology. So we played around with lots of different suppliers and got quite a few people involved.
Yeah. What do you think about robotics now? Because I'm guessing you've seen what Elon Musk has done and all that stuff.
Oh yeah, I mean,
where do you see that going?
I mean, obviously, sort of robotics and AI and machine learning and all that is it's got its place, but still, I think in the FM industry, in the actual service delivery, I don't know, it's in my head it's still not quite, it's not developed enough yet, certainly cleaning, it's still a distribution center, it's still a 24-hour operation
without doubt.
It's still
and you've got spillages and breakages,
it's constant,
there's a health and safety association with it as well, whereby you need to make sure it's
exactly. I get it in a football stadium where it's cutting the grass, you can absolutely see why it works, and it's 100%. Someone, a little robot comes in, out it comes, zoom, zoom, zoom.
Fly my.
Absolutely.
Bish, bash, bosh.
Exactly. Motorboard, job done.
Many, many years ago, back in 2008, when I returned to the United Kingdom, I actually worked in a distribution centre for Tesco. Okay. Very briefly, cleaning first, which I didn't like, so I stopped. And then picking for about a week and a half, which I didn't like, so I stopped. But it was the financial crash, so you're kind of like trying to find anything with it. But they are very, they're interesting environments. I don't think people necessarily understand, what's actually happening there. Because a store puts an order in, you've got to go pick it. It's and depending on the time of year.
Retail is fascinating because everyone just thinks of their local Sainsbury's, Tesco, whatever it is.
It's just nice and easy.
It's nice and easy. But it is literally, distribution centres that have got train lines coming into them, and hundreds of lorries in and out every day.
Yeah.
I think if people really understood it and saw it, it'd be mind blowing for people.
So how many DCs out of interest would a company like Sainsbury's have?
Oh, God,
approximately.
I think they had about 12 or 13, something like that, across the UK. But even, that was basically when they were just servicing the stores.
Yeah.
Nowadays, where you're trying to do,
Argos
deliveries, I think they've got 30 odd of those sort of local distribution centres. And then obviously almost every big supermarket is a distribution centre as well, because your online shop
it's true.
out there.
Yeah,
so,
without doubt.
Yeah, it's a big old beast of retail operation nowadays. Is 24/7 and
it is.
Really,
it's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, they only close down Christmas Day, don't they?
Pretty much, yeah. Easter Sunday, in a big store, Easter Sunday and Christmas Day, I think are the only days you're really not allowed to trade, aren't they?
But the petrol stations are still open.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. And I think it's 3,000 square feet, isn't it?
You get your milk, your eggs,
you're fine.
And your chocolate bar,
right,
which is good. So anyway, let's talk about something really important. Mm-hmm. Did you ever have an Argos catalogue?
Absolutely, yeah.
Do you remember circling what you wanted as a kid?
Christmas list.
Kids don't do that anymore, do they? They're missing out, aren't they? They're all online, putting it in their cart. It's a different thing.
Yeah. And what I've realised is my mum phoned me the other day saying, "Oh, just let you know, parcel's going to turn up. It's Harry's Christmas present." I'm like, "What?"
Yeah.
He's texted her the link.
No way.
In case you're wondering, Grandma, what I want for Christmas.
Yeah.
Here it is, the link.
Yeah. My kids do that to me. Do you know what I mean? Like you'll get a link on WhatsApp, but the thing is, it gets exponentially dearer as they get older, doesn't it?
You know what I mean? You get to have Christmas or birthday.
Yeah. Like my son sent me a link for like a mountain bike. You know what I mean? It's like 750 quid or something like that, and he just said, "I'll have this for Christmas, please, Dad." Anyway, sorry, interrupted. We digressed a little bit there. So Sainsbury's, you had multiple roles actually. Yeah. And you were in kind of FM for close to 4 years. Would that be?
Yeah, 4 or 5 years I was there. Yeah.
Did you touch on anything else that was quite interesting from an FM perspective? Because that's quite a dynamic environment, isn't it? I imagine it's quite difficult.
Yeah, I mean, I was sort of started on a retail training scheme. It was all about, running shops basically, and customer service, and all that kind of stuff is where I started. I really wanted to. I had a really good sort of 18 months training scheme where they sort of moved you around and you did different departments, all that kind of stuff. And at the end of it, I really wanted to come and live in London. So
I
think it was watching Friends and things like that. I was like, right, I need to live in a big city in a great house share with.
I need to live in an apartment.
Cool friends.
Yeah,
that's right.
Go to a coffee shop.
Yeah, that's it. So I sort of started applying for jobs in store support centre in Holborn, just down the road.
Yeah, just down the road from where we are. Yeah, we know it. Yeah.
And got a job in the supply chain. Just at the time, they were basically big old trajectory of rolling out their convenience stores, and they just bought a couple of smaller chains.
I remember when that happened.
That's right. Yeah.
Sainsbury's local.
That's right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it was just where that was sort of going great gun supply chain for those smaller stores, and how we were integrating the companies that Sainsbury's had bought at the time,
right? Okay.
Convenience.
Yeah.
So that's how,
because they did that quite quickly as well, didn't they? Really?
Yeah, I mean, I think
that turned around really quickly.
Yeah, I think it was from the first one up to about 400 or 500. They were
first one to 400 or 500.
Yeah. I think that was sort of
it's crazy numbers, isn't it?
Over a 10-year period, I guess they did a pretty dramatic, kind of rollout program, and they bought Bells and Jacksons, which are were big kind of.
I remember Bells and Jacksons. I do. Yeah.
Your accent.
Yeah. Of course I do. Yeah. Used to get 2 litre bottles of cider from there when I was a young. When I was 16, please, sir, can I have some more?
Big old beast of Sainsbury's.
Where's your ID?
Put a stop to that.
Yeah, without that.
But that was how I that's how I came to London, and that was a really interesting role that I really enjoyed. And I did a stint in marketing where I looked after sort of external events. So I ran marketing and agricultural shows and BBC Good Food shows and stuff like that.
Via Sainsbury's?
Via Sainsbury's,
Really? Yeah. That's a real sideways
it was, exactly, yeah. But it was fascinating. That was chatting to farmers and customers and all that kind of stuff, and sort of hosting. Well, the idea was, farmers came, suppliers came, met with buyers.
Of course,
developing sort of the local sort of supply chains and stuff.
You don't think about the complexity though, do you know what I mean? Because you think about what it takes to get that milk into the supermarket. You know, everything that goes behind that, and like an FM element would actually have a large part to do with that as well.
Oh yeah. And there was all sorts going on at the time. You know, there was a lovely lady called Judith Batchelor who was there at the time, who was director of Sainsbury's brand, I think she was, and it was all about eggs, free range eggs being sold, and donations to the Woodland Trust and dairy development groups and all this kind of stuff. So
of course.
Of that kind of supermarkets were suddenly having to become responsible retailers and not what they were before, but it was very much a focus.
It was like the Wild West before then.
That's right. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Everybody's everyone was at it.
Buyers and farmers and the agricultural team at Sainsbury's and meeting each other. So I did a stint doing that.
Right.
And then because I spent so much time away when my daughter was born, my wife was like, "You can't spend all this time away." So I ended up doing a really great job as a PA to one of the directors. So I was
Oh, really?
PA to the retail HR director.
Yeah.
Which is fascinating. I mean, you ever said, would you ever do that? As a youngster or anything, but I would 100% recommend something like that.
Why did you find it fascinating? Out of interest?
Oh, just because you learned, all these sort of big board directors when I was younger were these sort of gods, they were these sort of amazing people that you would have to, not speak to.
Yeah, I remember that. It's just when you get to your 40s, you start to realise, they're just people.
Well, exactly.
But when you're younger, you're like,
When I first started at Sainsbury's, the store manager was still Mr. You called him. He was, It
was the god of Sainsbury's.
Absolutely, and we've had
thou shalt not pass.
We've had a visit from your regional director.
Oh my God, you're hiding the toilets when he turns up.
Absolutely, It's people like me who, as a trainee manager, were sort of swept aside. But it was fascinating doing that EA job or PA job because you just you got this sort of exposure that very few people got, and you realise these directors of these big companies, Sainsbury's FTSE 100, it's a big old company.
It is,
they were just normal people. They were great people. They were interesting.
With
they had children. They had their own challenges. And, of course. Actually, seeing how a business ran as well was really interesting. How decisions were made, how things happened, how the sort of cogs moved and stuff.
Would you say that taught you some actually quite important lessons in terms of how to deal with people at all levels?
Yeah.
And that gave you a bit of insight into that?
Yeah, I think so. I think from a sort of relationship management, stakeholder management thing, it was really interesting. It was sort of, you sort of started in that role and straight away it was like, right, go and see so-and-so or go and tell so-and-so we're not doing it. Or
of course.
We are doing it or whatever. And you're suddenly like,
Did any of those individuals become like a mentor to you or when you were working with people at that high level?
Yeah, I think, certainly, there was the retail director at Sainsbury's at the time, a guy called Roger Burnley. We did things like, he was dead keen on cycling. So he wanted to cycle from London to Paris. And he was like, well, will you come and do that kind of stuff?
Did you do it?
Yeah.
Oh, really?
I didn't cycle.
No?
I drove the support van.
Oh, fair enough. No.
It was one of those I'll just drive on a bit.
Catch me up.
And obviously Sainsbury's is a massive sponsor of sports relief and comic relief. And so you got involved supporting some of the sort of senior guys doing all sorts of weird and wacky things.
So some really cool stuff then that really sort of brought you on, would you say, from a skill set perspective?
I think from a skill set and definitely a confidence point of view and my own personal sort of actually,
And this was all kind of before you went into FM, wasn't it? So, But and do you think that kind of set you up for? Yeah. Because FM's people, isn't it? That's what it is. That's people and buildings.
Yeah, buildings obviously.
Yeah. But there's got to be buildings. But it's
I think
people,
so.
Isn't it?
FM's about internal stakeholders, but obviously managing, a huge supply chain, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think I went on and my role at Arcus was managing for Sainsbury's, 200 odd contractors, 250 million pounds to spend, and having to have some
that's a big budget.
Pretty tough old conversations with.
And how did you find that? Did you have to? Was that something that sat outside of your comfort zone initially? So you had to develop those skills to have difficult conversations because there's an art to it, isn't there? There really is.
if you do any of these sort of insights profiling or whatever, I always come out as a sunshine yellow,
Yeah.
I'm kind of, let's do it together, all that.
I'm a little bit like that. Yeah. Catch more flies with honey than vinegar. That kind of, that kind of attitude. Yeah.
Yeah. So I really have to dial up my kind of, blue and red kinds of insight stuff, which is all the sort of data and then the red stuff. So it outside of my comfort zone, definitely. But again, those kind of roles teach you how to sort of take your skill set and apply it to something. And I think you learn quite quickly what value you bring. Being able to have those sort of quite challenging conversations in the right way.
Yeah.
It's quite whereas other people might approach it going like right, your KPI was X, you failed it. Why? You're out, or why?
Just blunt. Blunt. Very direct.
Being able to bring that kind of, sort of
need to utilise the sandwich technique. That's the way to do it.
And I think you definitely learn quite quickly how to use the skills that you've apply them to a situation. And I mean dealing with huge suppliers and what I found was quite tricky sometimes was suddenly you were up against a sort of commercial director for a big old sort of a Mighty or a whatever who was managing managing kind of millions
a beast.
A long meeting and have to go in there, but that's where data's huge, isn't it, and really powerful, and being able to sort of leverage actually black and white and saying actually you were supposed to do this, you're not doing it, let's have a proper conversation around why. And I think the thing I learned most in that job, going back to this, that sort of job I did as contract management at Sainsbury's or Arcus for Sainsbury's, was about actually all these businesses are just, they've got to make money themselves. And actually, if you're, going to be, you've got to work together. There
has to be collaboration, doesn't there?
100%,
without a doubt.
100%.
Because if you're pulling in different directions, then nobody goes anywhere quickly.
Yeah, and even in the same direction, you basically, obviously, as you're on the sort of the side of the client, you want the best deal possible, but at the same time, you're not doing it yourself. So you've got to respect the fact that these guys out there have got to make they're making a living and all the rest of it. So that was sort of that role was really good at teaching me that. You kind of, if you're any kind of negotiation, you've got to be able to say, what are we prepared to pay for this service, and making sure that everyone else in the supply chain is looked after to a certain extent.
You've got to have that framework there, don't you? Because there are some people, clients, things like that are out there that are like, how dare you? Like, how can you invest in a service or anything like that if the people you work with don't understand that there's got to be an element of, we're here to do X. I mean, it's a capitalist economy at the end of the day, isn't it? That's the reality.
And especially if you want your supplier to invest in, or technology, or you want them to be looking at something, they've got that has to be funded somehow, doesn't it?
Yeah,
so, whatever margin you're paying, you'd like to think it's not just going on the bottom line. An element of that is going into research and development, or it's trying to improve things.
Yeah, things have got to be mutually beneficial, I think. And a level playing field as well, I think, is really important. When you're operating in those kinds of things. So I completely agree.
Yeah,
completely.
Well, as a supplier yourself, you must sort of see that.
We love a negotiation.
Exactly.
I mean, look, I think as well. I think since post-COVID, focus on people is far better. The focus on well-being is far better. I think the industry on the whole is moving in the right direction. Which is absolutely fantastic to see, because I've been around 20 years. So I remember when the minimum wage was like £5.81 an hour. You know what I mean? And it was just about especially in like the services industry and things like that, dropping bodies and get someone there who was a different kettle of fish. Whereas now it's more about investing in your people, retaining your people, dealing with them in the right kind of way. So, I mean, that to me is a welcome shift. Because I've been saying that for a lot of years.
I mean, it costs a lot of money to recruit, train, so actually, if you're investing in the people you've got and making them feel valued and, they don't leave, ultimately, you're kind of quids in, aren't you?
Develop people properly. Everybody's got skills, everybody's got different skills. So it's about identifying what those skills are and then bringing them to the forefront, I suppose, which isn't necessarily an easy thing to do sometimes. It can be quite a tough road to go down. But when you get it right, it's really beneficial.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's why I quite like retail and FM as industries generally. It's because it is still one of the industries you can kind of start at the bottom and work your way up. You can start as a replenishment assistant in a supermarket and become.
I love titles these days.
Yeah.
What happened to shelf stacker?
I
was a shelf stacker. Replenishment what? Replenishment assistant.
Yeah.
Oh,
shelf stacker or whatever. Or you can be a hygiene associate.
Or hygiene specialist.
You can still work your way up.
Hygiene operations.
Yeah, that's right. I think I like that about the industry we're in is that,
I like that we're professionalising it, you're giving people like a route, aren't you? You're saying, right, this is perhaps step one. Step two could be something different.
Yeah.
It's quite, because think about Sainsbury's, I think the retail sector is very similar to FM in that it's one of the sectors where you can start at the bottom.
That's exactly
and go all the way up to be CEO.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's very, there's a lot of people that are MDs, CEOs of businesses, started with a mop and a bucket, or they started as front of house, or they started as a security officer.
Yeah.
So, and it marries up between those two industries. And I think we, like, as an industry FM, we should be very proud of that.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think it's, I think it's great that, you see people that you worked with years ago, and they're now senior leaders in a business, or they've reached a level that they're really happy and comfortable with, and they're really excelling. And you can do that from startup. And I think that for me, I really love that about the opportunities I was given at Sainsbury's. I joined as an A-level sort of, they had a management training scheme at the time.
Was it like a graduate scheme?
No, not even graduate. It was management training scheme.
How old were you then, if you don't mind me asking something?
18 or 19.
So
proper.
Still a boy then, really.
Yeah,
like kid really.
Yeah.
I don't mean that disrespectfully.
No, I was. Yeah. And there was, at the time, there was hundreds of us each year. I mean, I think there was 20 odds on my intake, and that was in one region. That was like Wales and Bristol and sort of the southwest. There was, a group of us taken, and you were sort of.
What quick question, because I find this quite interesting. What people say is that young people don't want to work. They don't want to start at the bottom. They don't want to do X. They don't want to do Y. They want to come in and earn 60 grand a year immediately.
Yeah, that'd be nice.
Would be nice. But is it realistic? Did you think? Because how long ago was that?
20-something years ago. I think my first salary was 12 grand or something, and I thought I was chocolate.
Yeah, my first job post school, right? How much I got? £400 a month, and it was in a solicitor's. I got like 100 quid a week.
Yeah,
and then I wanted to buy a car, which cost me about £106 a month on finance. It's like bugger all money. Yeah. I ended up leaving and going to a petrol station because I could earn more cash. But it is interesting, because that's what they say about young people now, that they wouldn't necessarily go to a Sainsbury's or a cleaning company or a security company or whatever, and try and do that route of working their way up. How do you think? What advice would you give to somebody that wanted to join the FM industry? Okay, but let's say they didn't have any qualifications or school wasn't good for them.
Yeah,
because there's roots into it.
Absolutely. I think if you find something you enjoy, I mean, before I went, the reason I applied for the Sainsbury's scheme was because I was working in my local co-op as a Saturday boy. And I loved it. I loved chatting to people. I used to love going on a till. To get to chat to people. I was so nosy. I got to see what people are buying, and I was like, that's on offer. I'm going to go and buy that myself afterwards. I wouldn't have seen it. So I think if you find something that you're interested in, and it just basically sparks a little bit of interest, then just go for it. I mean, university's great and all the formal training is fantastic, and that can come later. But if you find something that you really, you really enjoy and you really want to do, then just go for it.
Do you know something? I used to work at McDonald's, right?
Yeah.
And I always wanted to work in the kitchen because that's where you had a laugh.
Yeah.
But because I was friendly and perky, and they would always put me out the front or on the drive-through, which I hated because you're kind of on your own. You know what I mean? And it was busy on the tills, especially. But this is back in the day when people went in. But that's a similar experience to yourself, really. Kind of starting within that route, and then sort of from that sort of Sainsbury's work. Because you then ended up in a full-on corporate.
Yeah.
So talk to us a little bit about that and how that, because that's a transition, I would say.
Well, yeah, I mean, it is a transition, and it is a change from that sort of retail environment to corporate. But in FM, ultimately, probably 1 million people listening to this now that are just like screaming at their radios or podcast or iPhones or whatever. But ultimately, a building's a building, isn't it? You know, and whether it's a supermarket, an office, a warehouse, whatever, an airport or whatever.
Transferable skills.
Exactly, transferable skills. And I think, they are all heated, cooled, cleaned. You have to move the air around to kind of keep it, keep the air quality there. You've got to light them, drainage. They're all very similar sort of, as you say, transferable skills. So if you sort of approach it with that kind of mentality, actually a building's a building. There's obviously specialism. So in a
But I suppose when you try and when you simplify it, that's true. It makes it, so whether it's a building that's 500,000 square feet or a building that's 50,000 square feet, or a shop.
It's all got a boiler somewhere. It's got a chiller. It's got an air handling unit somewhere.
Yeah.
And they're on scale. If you're in a massive, kind of.
So basically, what you're saying is that transition wasn't a difficult transition for you. You felt quite comfortable.
Yeah.
But then I guess as well, when you're talking about what you've done previously, there would have been office buildings associated with it. There would have been, different things. So I expect it would have been quite transferable.
Exactly, and I think the it's about taking that knowledge that you've got and applying it to the role that you're currently in. You're saying that actually, in a supermarket, it's all refrigeration. Whereas actually, when you're in an office block, there's obviously chillers. It's the same principle,
of course,
but it's not it's not feeding the chill down to a cabinet. It's just blowing it around the building. So there is definite, but the actual mechanics, the M&E behind it is very similar. It's the same concept. So
right, okay.
And I think as long as FM, call it down, is quite simple in some ways, isn't it? It's about.
Don't say that to some FM people. Oh, right, you're on sketchy ground there.
I think it's about motivated people. Are they
process compliant?
Yeah. And if you get those sort of cliche phrase again, but sort of brilliant basics right, then actually it gives you the ability to then do some of the more fancy stuff about, which is where my current role in the corporate world, running HQ offices, where you've got anyone from the Prime Minister coming in for a meeting or whatever.
Oh, really?
Yeah, or we've had all sorts of different people.
Well, there's been about 10 of them in the last 2 years, hasn't there?
Well, that's right. It doesn't matter. But, all that kind of stuff is it's all the same stuff, but it allows you, if you've got a brilliant building run well, doing all that great stuff around how you impress people and make it kind of the sexy stuff. Brilliant catering and all the rest of it, or brilliant service. You have to have got that sort of bedrock of brilliant basics in place to be allowed to do that. Otherwise, all you're doing is running around trying to fix a leak or pop a mop round,
Take pictures of toilets.
Which, as an FM, that's, that is FM, isn't it?
But more pictures of toilets than we do with our kids.
You look, exactly. Look at my phone. My wife's always like,
my wife's like, what on earth are you doing?
Wandering around loose.
What is that? I can tell you some toilets. I'm sure you can tell me some as well too. To be fair, if you've got one, crack on.
I was going to say, because that's why I think FM is quite interesting. Is there is somebody out there that's got it right. So you kind of, it's just finding that person. And I was taken to Heathrow once, and they've got their toilets. You can imagine thousands, millions of people, I guess, going through them. Behind the scenes, you can see all the the pipe work and stuff and how they manage it. And it was just fascinating to go, blimey, O'Reilly, this is like a whole industry here, keeping these things smelling good. And you can take a little bit of that back to your scenario. And, we fixed it, smelly toilets or smelly urinals were a thing of the past, for a while, or you at least found a way of, sorting out and addressing.
I remember, I've seen them. I'm not a big fan myself, but I see the rationale behind them.
Yeah,
not my cup of tea though.
Yeah,
to be fair. I think the whole washroom scenario is changing anyway. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
that aren't urinals and things like that.
That's
You're probably never going to get that in restaurants or anything like that. However, in commercial office buildings, that's the way it's going.
Yeah,
I don't see it changing and coming back either.
No, the office we've just opened in Cardiff is, it's all sort of, the same. They're just cubicles with a loo and a wash hand basin and a dryer and a soap dispenser, and that's it. We have got some of them sort of dedicated male, female, just because that's the way that the users of the building wanted it. But ultimately, the design is, all the same.
Without doubt.
Urinals and all the rest of it.
Yeah,
which is getting interesting because those toilets probably use more water than a urinal would ever have. So
exactly.
From a sort of environmental point of view.
Yeah, we've gone full circle.
It's another challenge again, isn't it?
We're
trying to use our water. Then you're back to another challenge that
just need a massive Bowser on the roof of every building. It rains enough in this country.
Well, exactly. Rainwater.
Let's be smart.
Grey water is
get a bit of grey water and all that stuff, and gravity will help. Nice and simple.
Our office down in got rainwater harvesting. So it takes the water off the roof. It goes for toilet flushing and all that kind of stuff. And Sainsbury's big. They were fairly early adopters of some of that kind of technology.
It's good. It makes sense. To harvest water and utilise it properly, because then you're not taking it out of the reservoirs and things like that.
It costs a lot to process all that water. So if you can stop processing as much, it's like anything, isn't it? Generating electricity or whatever you're doing, if you can find a way of doing it that's local or that is, sort of simpler or more straightforward, then why not?
I've just had a wicked idea.
Oh, here
we go. And honestly, it's just come to me, a realisation. This is brilliant, right? Every building has a Bowser on it, a massive one, collects water. Within the pipework, you've got a little turbine, which the water has to pass through, which would allow each building to generate its own electricity. Come on.
How much rain are we having? Power.
Well, this is England, probably a fair old bit, to be fair. Well, to be fair, let's be honest here, how much would it cost? And let's say you powered 2 floors in that building per annum from you, then it's got to be good, hasn't it?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think this sort of energy stuff is really interesting. So in the little town I live in, there's a weir. So we live on the River Thames. There's a weir, and I think it's something like 30 weirs or something along the River Thames in total. And in Reading, they've got this sort of turbine now that is generating electricity from the water flowing over us. They're just looking at a little small group in our town that are looking to try and make kind of a non-for-profit sort of to create energy for the town and all that kind of stuff. So there's, if you've got offshore wind or solar power, but some of these smaller sort of localized projects are probably the way, the technology means that it's cost effective to do it.
Yeah.
So there we go. Your downpipe from your roof.
Exactly.
You generate.
I just want to say as well, I've copyrighted that. Okay, brilliant. We haven't got a lot of time left, but let me ask you one question. What's been the biggest challenge in your career? Okay. And also, what has been the biggest achievement?
I think the biggest challenge has been about getting people to understand, what FM is all about. Certainly in my current role, everyone moans it's too hot, it's too cold, it's this, it's that, all the rest of it.
Yeah.
But actually, you've got buildings designed to do things. They operate within certain parameters. We're not investing for one reason or another, or we are investing, or we're not the policies and projects, we're not going to heat them or cool them to a lesser or more degree because of the environment. So there's so much stuff going on. Trying to get people on that journey is probably the biggest sort of challenge, I think. And certainly when, back in my Sainsbury's days, refrigeration, I think the power, the electricity used in refrigeration was something like 1% of the entire UK. Probably going to be told off for misquoting that, but something like that. It was like 1%.
What, 1% of the UK power grid?
Yeah,
No
was
way.
just
It just take a lot of energy to refrigerate.
but- and so people would be like, anything we were trying to do to reduce that, putting doors on fridges and all that kind of stuff, was all like met with such resistance. But trying to get people to understand and get on that journey with you in terms of what we're doing and why. And
I did always wonder why they suddenly had doors on fridges. In places like Sainsbury's and things like that. Yeah, that makes sense.
So I think that's the biggest challenge in FM is getting people to understand the bigger picture. It's not just, we're old FMs and we can't be bothered saying things or, there's an easier route. It's actually, there's a bigger picture in terms of, whether it be the environment that people work in or the bigger picture in terms of the, bigger environment. Whatever. So I think that's the biggest challenge is getting people to understand and get on that sort of journey in terms of why we do what we need to do what we're,
An achievement?
Biggest achievement, I think, certainly what I've done at L&G or what I've been involved in at L&G, I've really enjoyed in terms of, this understanding what the office is all about in this sort of post-pandemic world,
Post-pandemic, you make it sounds like one of those dodgy films, doesn't it? You know what I mean? Apocalyptic.
But, and every business I know...
As I walk the wasteland of facilities management. Yeah.
Well, I mean...
It was like 28 days, wasn't it? Do you remember that film? 28 days later. I kept looking around for zombies. Like, you know what I mean? What's going on here?
But I think, finding out, how people are going to use offices going forward. Closing offices, condensing space, creating environments and spaces that work for people. Learning, what we thought people were going to do and now what they are actually doing. You sort of win that, staying at home or coming into the office, how you kind of, make the office an attractive place. So get people to understand that actually there's huge positives in the office. Certainly from the angle that you guys come from with this podcast in terms of actually you need people in an office to teach people and to learn and these sort of, water cooler moments or being able to just ask someone across the desk. If you're a graduate, you say, how do I do this? If everyone's sat at home, you can't do that. So the office is still massively important. Sort of,
I think you're completely right there.
Yeah,
we're human beings. We want to be able to communicate face to face.
Personal connection is really important.
And I think Teams at first it was a bit of a novelty, wasn't it? We're all a bit like, this is all right,
Yeah.
And we all felt like newsreaders, didn't we? We had a shirt on and then we were sat in our pants. It's that kind of scenario, isn't it? Yeah. I would say we all work for the BBC, but they're not the best at the minute.
I think that has been really exciting the last couple of years is really understanding what it looks like now and how we're not there yet, are we? No. It's still massive. And certainly then how you then want to, pay living wage, then actually
very important.
Do that.
Absolutely crucial. People's fair day's pay for a fair day's work. Really important.
Adapt the way that we run our build and the way that we approach and approach kind of all that we do as FMs and professionals to say, do we need to do it this way? Let's challenge ourselves. And I think we've had sort of 3 or 4 years of real good learning coming out of the pandemic. We've probably got 3 or 4 years of further change before we really get and understand.
It's going to be wicked. AI, mate. Honestly, it's going to be a ride. Yeah, it's going to be a ride.
My wife's in this, so I don't think she's not going anywhere too soon. So.
No, fair. Well, I don't know about. Mind you, robots do operations now, don't they?
Maybe that's the way forward, isn't it? Just line it up, cross on a conveyor belt, and barcode on your chest like that.
QR code,
scan,
heart bypass.
Maybe.
We'll have to see. Anyway, listen. Final question. All right. What do you like to get up to outside of work? What gives you the most joy? What are your hobbies?
I love food, so I like cooking. I like having people around to the house and all that kind of stuff. So sort of socializing in that way, I love. Kids keep me busy. Both, my kids love football. So
who's their team?
Oh, my son is a Tottenham Hotspur fan.
Really?
Daughter, Manchester City.
No.
Yeah.
No.
They both play football. So Saturdays are.
You need to lock her under the stairs, mate. I'll tell you. Don't let her out till she can convert. Who do you follow out of interest?
I follow my son's team and my daughter's team, and that's
you follow them both. You can't have 2 football teams. You cannot have 2 football teams. Have you never seen Eric Cantona's statement? Change your wife, you can change your job, but you can never change your football team.
Yeah.
It's so true.
I have to do. I do most of the laundry at home, so I love their kits equally.
Have you got a Spurs shirt and a Man City shirt?
Me personally?
Yeah. No. Oh, okay. Fair enough.
We've got enough shirts, pajamas, and bed linen, and all the rest of it.
Yeah. Of course, yeah.
I don't need to get involved.
Fair enough. Yeah, I won't tell you who I support. It's not Man City. Just begin with man, though.
Yeah, Mansfield.
No, Man United, mate. Man United. Okay. All right, Sam. Well, listen, that's the end of the podcast. How did you find it?
Really interesting, yeah.
Yeah, really enjoyed it. Thank you very much for joining us. And thank you very much for giving your advice and your insights and so on and so forth. I'm sure, Sam, you won't mind if people reach out to you on LinkedIn after listening to the podcast, if they've got any questions or anything like that. But thank you very much for joining us. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you very much.
Lovely. All right, guys, that brings us to the end of another great entertaining Wear Many Hats. Sam was a fabulous guest. As ever, that's the end.